Hey, we are back. Welcome to Alia & Co., the podcast where we talk about complex things and we make them super easy to understand. I'm your host, Alia Kizilbash, and today I am here with a pretty amazing guest. But let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Today we are talking about feeling stuck. I know as a kid, I'm sure you guys have done math problems where you've just literally been writing pages and pages of calculations and just not being able to get it, And I think that there's a lot of times that happens. So, you guys know that feeling of feeling stuck, or, maybe there's other times in your life where maybe you're trying to lose weight and no matter what you do in terms of exercise or diet and you're trying to change things, it just does not change. You're stuck. You feel like, what am I supposed to do? More seriously, sometimes you might be stuck in a profession where you have spent a lot of time educationally building up and climbing the ranks, and then realizing that you actually might want to do something different. And you don't know how to because you have like the financial limitations. You're just trying to kind of make it through, and it's kind of miserable and you feel stuck. So today we are here with a pretty amazing guest. He has started in the restaurant industry and also promotion in terms of the nightlife space. They're also reinventing himself in the art scene, which is actually such an intriguing space. But I feel as though I can't do enough justice to your introduction. So I would love for you, Matthew, to introduce yourself. And we're just really happy to have you.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the opportunity to come on here. And I'm excited to get unstuck here for everyone. So my name is Matthew Moore. I created a company called ArtistReplete. It started off as an e-commerce company, and it kind of took off in the pandemic. From there, we moved into a brick and mortar location off of Michigan Avenue in the end of 2022. And now it has turned both e-commerce and brick and mortar. So we focus on selling artwork online, in person, exhibitions, public art installations, custom art, kind of an all-encompassing art brand. I like to say brand because I don't box us in just to our physical location or just an e-commerce location. We also do collaborations kind of with my old life in the restaurant world. So we'll do restaurant takeovers. We'll exhibit art as well. So as I've developed the business, I've just kind of seen all these different areas that I could go into with it. And it's kind of just a never-ending kind of cycle of like reinvention with it as well. So
yeah. I think in terms of art, creativity, that's key.
Yeah.
And I see, you're not painting and you're not using the mediums, but I think that specifically within your space creatively from a business aspect, you really are creating.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't paint or I'm not like an artist myself. I always kind of I found out that I was pretty good at sales when I like had sales jobs, particularly in like the nightclub realm when you're selling things like bottle service, just high ticket items. But I never really felt like I was contributing to anything doing that. It was kind of just a gray area of my life. So I had a friend who was an artist through that industry, and then he asked me to sell his work, and I said I don't know what I'm doing. So I just started researching, and then once I ended up selling one piece, the feeling I got was like overwhelming. It was like, well, I'm helping out an artist. Someone gets a piece of art, and then once I learned about the investment value of it, how art can accumulate in value, depending on an artist's career, depending on the market. It just really became just so fascinating. And from there, I just got obsessed, and I just kind of researched it, studied it, and just grew it over time.
I love it. And we are going to delve way more into that, which I think that a lot of people, especially like people who don't know a lot about art, I'm sure that they have very specific questions. I have specific questions, which I feel like I want to break them down so people can understand why, a 4-year-old doing Scribble Scrabble is very different than, an artist who's had a career, who's, selling their painting for, many monies.
Yeah.
So, but I want to scale it back, and I want to kind of start at the beginning. You and the restaurant space. Please tell me about that. Where did you start, and what was the contention there?
Yeah. So, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I followed in the footsteps of my brother. My brother has always been, a passionate person in the food industry. He's a chef, and then he's been involved in restaurants and catering, and he's just all about that life. So me growing up, he's 9 years older than me, by the way. Me growing up, I always wanted to do something, follow some path. So naturally, I just followed in the footsteps of my older brother. Over time, I just realized that was not my passion, that was not my calling, and I kind of just took note of my surroundings of what I was into. And then over time, I kind of found my niche, but I didn't find it until I was almost 30 years old. So I'm 38 now, but I didn't really find anything that I really liked until I was around 28 when the art thing came around. So I was kind of bouncing from industry to industry to just figure out what I could do, how I could survive, what I liked, and just taking notes along the way. The most important thing was, what is something that I can age into? Meaning, what is something I could really love in my 40s, in my 50s, in my 60s? Because I never really wanted to work in an industry where I just work hard and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to retire. I wanted to do something where I could just do it for for as long as I'm alive, and not really have this push to just be in something and get out of something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it just checked all the boxes for me, and that's why I just pursued it. Yeah.
I think that specifically, kids all their lives, adults are asking, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
Or even when you get to college, like to have to decide immediately what you want to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Me specifically, I mean, I have switched so many things after so many years and finally found my calling way later in life and been super excited about it. I mean, do you feel like, it's unfair that we're almost expected to know what we're doing? Or do you think that that's experience of, that school of hard knocks is kind of a good way to do it?
I mean, I think everyone is different in each experience. Like each person's experience is different. For me, I never even went to college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So my parents were actually getting a divorce at that time, so it almost didn't even seem like it was an option. But had it been an option, I don't know if I would want to just jump into stuff to get kind of like a core foundation or a degree when I had no idea what I wanted to do. So my life was different in that aspect. So, I mean, I think college is a great thing if you have an idea of what you want to do. I mean, there's like no doctor or lawyer or dentist, who doesn't have, significant amount of like formal education. But for other industries, it may not 100% be needed. So I think everyone, to each their own, whatever they feel is right. But if you are uncertain, I think you should kind of look deeper into yourself and figure out, what do I like? What do I want to do? What course of action do I want to take? And you don't really know that until you've kind of lived a life in many different areas, when you've tried different things. For me, it was a hobby. It made no money almost in the beginning. I mean, I sold a couple pieces of art, but for the first 2 years, it made almost nothing. But I just kept on moving along with it, and then it kind of just broke through after that. So I'd recommend anyone to take notes of your hobbies and your passions, and it's not an easy thing to do. Like I think there's a big thing of just following in the footsteps of what makes money and what creates immense stability, and that's great too. But if you can check this other box where you can get those things and you can feel like enriched, and feel that I'm really doing something with my life, then that is like living on a whole other stratosphere, in my personal opinion.
Do you think that people maybe lie to themselves? Like, I think that there's a programming, an expectation, like where it's like, oh, well, I'm supposed to do this, and because society wants you to be some professional.
Yeah, yeah. Thankfully, I come from a family that's pretty open-minded, but I have friends with, a bunch of different individuals, and their parents were like, doctor, lawyer, dentist. Those are your options. Well, we will not accept anything else. And they went into that, and they're successful at that. I don't know if they're particularly happy, but but they're doing their thing. So I think there's a lot of push on like being at a certain level in life, and kind of going a certain direction that's gonna please like your parents and gonna please like their friends and all of that. So there is an element of like control, I think, going into it. But if you're open to just trying new things and taking a different route, and you don't have that pressure from your family, then I think there's you can do a lot of great things. I also think that you can follow, that pressure, but you can also maybe experiment in other things on the side too,
Mm-hmm.
and then change paths if need be. That's
Mm-hmm.
like a smooth way to deal with family pressures.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of some of the people that I know.
No,
So
that's actually really good practical advice,
yeah,
which I think that if you need a strategy,
yeah,
right? I mean, the exploration of things that you enjoy, and on the side as a hobby, instead of, kind of like, okay, this is what I've chosen and I need to do that.
yeah, yeah. The funny thing is looking back, and it's a joke I kind of just do with my family at this point, but for the first like 3 or 4 years of me like creating Artist Replete, family was like, dude, when are you gonna give up this art thing? When are you gonna stop? And then when we moved into our location downtown and they visited, they're like, you know what? I see it. I see what you got going on here. Okay, this is cool. But I needed to work into the point where it was a physical reality, for
Mhm.
them, because they just, were doubters, but they were doubters from a place of protection,
Right.
and
Right.
I think family comes from a place of protection. They
Hmm.
don't want you to suffer,
Hmm.
and they know these things, but the wild thing is, generations have changed dramatically. Once the internet
Hmm.
came to, fruition, like all these other occupations
Hmm.
came to light. And that really wasn't around in my parents,
Hmm.
generation when they were like in school and all that. So them like saying like, hey, you can sell like a $20,000 painting online. Like this is like that whole notion like didn't even exist. That to
Hmm.
even think like that didn't
Hmm.
even exist,
Right.
so I just think that just things are a lot different now. There's
Hmm.
so much more opportunities, in the tech world and online ventures, and the older generation just doesn't know to think like that.
Hmm.
You know?
It's, yeah, agreed. It's because you're absolutely right. The access, right, like
Yeah.
to information, has really changed our society, and because of that, there's all of these new. I mean, AI, for example.
Yeah.
And actually, before we actually had met, I remember having gone to an event that was at your gallery, I think this past summer, on AI
Yeah.
and art,
Y-
which I definitely want to get into in terms of what your thoughts on art are.
Yeah.
But I do want to circle back to at least, in terms of the experiences that you're talking about, because nobody's going to college nowadays. I mean, people are going to college,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
with all these techies that you could just literally learn to code on online,
Yeah.
and then all of these amazing businesses that people are starting, these new like radical ideas that are unicorns that are out there, and people scaling businesses not just locally brick and mortar, but they're global now.
Right. Yeah.
And so the society has certainly changed, but definitely for you to get to that place of, okay, I need to explore. I'm sure that there were certain lessons that you learned, specifically as you mentioned that you were a line chef. In that space,
Yeah.
were there certain struggles, certain challenges, certain lessons that you learned that have really helped you come to the place where you are now?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's small parallel elements in my previous professions, like in the food industry. I'd work at really busy restaurants, so you'd kind of you'd have to work under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have to move quickly, you'd have to think quickly, and you would kind of have to almost like compartmentalize different things. Okay, this is here, this is here, this is here, like, okay, go. And some of those things, they have to do with what I'm doing now. The biggest thing that I realized is I worked at a lot of restaurants where it was creative. You ever been to like a nice restaurant and the plating is like
Mm-hmm.
really decadent, and
Mm-hmm.
you're like, wow, like a one Michelin star
Mm-hmm.
restaurant, and you're like, wow, this is cool. I realized that I worked at those places because I was so intrigued by the artistic element of that. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you can make something that is like a work of art that's edible. So that's where I realized that I kind of excelled in like plating and working at those places. And then in my most previous profession, which was it's actually like about 8 years, 9 years old at this point, working in the nightclub industry, it was just high ticket sales, selling stuff for like 3,000, 5,000, like $8,000. But when I saw that, I'd feel bad at the end of the night. I'm like, these people just got like really drunk, buying all this overpriced champagne,
Yeah.
and I was just making a living at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's selling something at a similar price. Well, now they can keep it. It could be an asset. It could go up in value. It just feels different. I think the greatest lesson in all this is recognize what you're good at and then find something that you're passionate about to kind of marry it into. Meaning, like, if you're good at selling, find a product, a service, something that you can sell passionately and you
Mm-hmm.
can sell well, that you really get behind.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's
No.
kind of how it all kind of came together.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely an evolution. You've worked in some interesting spaces,
Mm.
and I want to ask you some really dumb questions
No, no,
about.
no question is.
Okay, well, I mean, okay. So first question, and we can move on to this after you answer. I'm going to move on to
Yeah,
my
yeah,
next
yeah, yeah, for
dumb
sure.
question.
No, you're good.
In the restaurant industry, as a line cook, you're not in that industry anymore, so you don't have to worry about,
Yeah.
if a customer is really a jerk, is it possible for someone to spit in your food?
I never would do that. It does. I think it does exist in shadier restaurants.
Uh-huh.
So I worked in restaurants. A lot of them had open kitchens, meaning the customers could see you. It was an open kitchen.
Okay.
So like, yeah, you wouldn't be able to get away with that. I think that yeah, that could exist. In some like some burger joint, and if you're really rude, maybe it could happen.
Yeah.
But nothing that I worked in.
Okay.
So yeah.
So always be nice to your wait staff.
I think yeah. I think thankfully I didn't have to like deal with the customers per se. I was just the food part of it.
Right.
The waiters and waitresses, they would deal with that. But I do remember that they would deal with some like people who waited a long time for their food. When the restaurant got busy, they'd be really mad. Like, oh, I had a show. Well, yeah, we're late to like our show that we were supposed to go to, and you just do the best you can. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
interesting.
yeah.
So my second question about your next profession would be, so in the nightclub industry,
Yeah.
and this is different facets of your job because I know that you were selling sales
Yeah,
and
for sure.
and stuff like that. What's the right way to get into a club? Because you know that people will just show up and just shake the bouncer's hand like they've known them for 20 years, but they
Yeah.
don't even know them.
Yeah.
So what's the right way to get into
I think the
club?
first time you're just gonna have to be nice to the door guy. I mean, I don't go to clubs all anymore, but back in my day when I used to frequent them, I think you just need to meet people. Like you need to know the promoter. You need to be nice to the door guy. When you get in there, you need to tip the bartender well. You introduce yourself, meet the bartender, and then you can like when you're going there, you can be like, oh, here I'm here to see so and so. It was a big name thing. You say someone's name at the door. I'm here to. So
Okay.
that's kind of like the password of
I
those
see.
things. So.
So name drop.
Yeah, I'm like a decade out of those things, but
The
back,
structure's the same.
but that's how it worked back in my my heyday.
Okay.
So
All right. So name drop and
yeah,
and hopefully try to know the person that you're name dropping.
yeah, for sure. Don't make up a name.
Don't make up a name.
Is Jimmy here? Yeah.
Yeah, no,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
No, for sure. So, okay. So definitely. So those are two questions that I'm asking. I will continue to ask my version of questions as we continue along with your journey because
Sounds good.
you have had some pretty cool experiences. So,
Yeah.
having the restaurant experience, going into the nightlife space, realizing that you're great at sales,
Right.
which I think that not everybody is great at sales.
Yeah.
I think it takes a very specific kind of person to recognize how to talk to people in a way that gets them excited.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
tell us about the basics 101, sales 101.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to be a people person, and you have to. The biggest thing is it's almost like a level of emotional intelligence. Put yourself in the mind of the customer, and how are you going to differentiate yourself from the pack? So for me, I would take care of a lot of the Bears players when I worked at the nightclubs, and they would always come to me because I would come outside. I would walk them like from their valet to their table. I would make sure that their favorite bottle server was working, that there would be some shots lined up, like just things like that, and then outside of that I would hang out with them. I would buy them dinner sometimes. I would form a friendship. I think with sales you need to just go above and beyond and realize it is like it's a personal business. You need to personalize it, and you need to put your personal touch in it. I think a lot of salespeople, they're really like by the book. You need to put a little flair to it. Like, hey, what's going on? Well, like, how was your weekend? Like, to just add some personal touch to it. If it's so transactional based, people are gonna see right through that. They don't want to deal with that.
And
So
yeah, of course. And so so building relationships is good then.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and with the art industry, I'm blessed to meet long-term collectors, people who just buy through the gallery regularly, really established people, and they will just continue to buy through us. And then outside of that, I'll go to their birthdays. I'll I'll grab dinner with them. Yeah, well, I'm developing this thing now where I'm introducing one art collector to another, in kind of like a social setting. So like almost building a community around it, like go above and beyond what the transaction is and what it can be, what can you offer back to that person, besides just the thing you're selling, like how can you enrich their life, So
It definitely takes a level of authenticity, definitely relationship building specifically.
yeah, for sure.
I would say, speaking of relationships,
Yeah.
seems that
Here
you've
we go.
had
It's gonna
some
get juicy, y'all. Yeah.
some pretty transformative
Oh yeah.
relationships. I'd say definitely there, and from what I'm hearing of you is that, a family is definitely a big relationship for you.
Yeah,
Your siblings, your parents,
for sure.
they're a support system.
Yeah.
But then outside of that, you mentioned that there was a relationship that you learned a lot from.
Yeah, I mean, there's been multiple I learned a lot from, but I think first off, entrepreneurism, it comes with side effects. It can be really stressful, especially when you're first starting out. You're working a lot of hours, and this can take a toll in other areas of life, and it can really take a toll in the dating life because it's hard for someone who just kind of works a stable life, where they know where the paycheck is coming from, to date someone who doesn't really know like when their next check is coming in. And it was difficult, especially when I was building this thing, to try and date, because you want to find love, you want to build a connection, and there's those kind of classic goals like, oh, I want to have a family, I want to have a house, all these things. But sometimes this life doesn't turn out that way. And me building this business kind of took priority where other elements of my life kind of took a back seat. So dating kind of had taken a back seat as much as I wanted to make it work. It didn't work in the beginning, just because the business creating something, it was just really stressful, and then you add trying to take care of somebody on top of that, it can get exhausting. So in the early stages of growing this company, yeah, it was difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just coming from a female perspective, right?
Yeah.
And I think that both males and females, they're not physiologically, they're not the same. Women,
Correct.
there's a lot of kind of like different things that happen in their life that shifts their way of thinking.
For sure.
And also, women in general, they have problems. They want to talk about it. So
Yeah.
that's how they kind of bond with their friends, and it's therapeutic for them.
Yeah.
Whereas, at least from what I hear, and please correct me if I'm wrong, men don't like talking about things. Do you find that they kind of push them down?
I think the classic sort of man does. Like I like talking about those things now, but however, in my mid to late 20s, I did not. But as I've kind of
Why?
I don't really know. I think that I felt so consumed by my own problems, I didn't want to trying to figure out someone else's, But now I just have such, much more stability in my life where I can handle listening, and I like, talking to my friends, and I like problem solving, So that's kind of like where I'm at now, So yeah.
Do you feel like you've gotten over time better at kind of understanding your own self, your brain?
Yeah, for sure. I think throughout our lives, we're just striving to understand ourselves the best way we can. And sometimes we have to make drastic changes in our life in order to kind of become the person that we want to be, And it's funny, people will go through a breakup and then suddenly you see them in the gym. They weren't in the gym before, they're making changes, or some sort of catalyst will just change their life, So and that's just people just kind of learning along the way through hardship. And I think hardship and failure is such an incredible lesson, and we shouldn't we shouldn't be living in a space where we're just afraid of failure or afraid of things not working out. I like to almost look at it in an extremely glass half full mentality, meaning that I either learn or I win. I don't look at it as losing, because if I lose, like there's a tremendous amount of knowledge that I can gain from that experience, even if it's a devastating loss, so I'll either win or I'll have like a great lesson, so that's how I kind of look at it,
like a lesson.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
any
Yeah.
failure is actually a lesson for
Yeah,
next
so the
time.
whole losing mentality, maybe it'll lose by like the classic sense, but I think there's just like there's just so much knowledge you can gain from losing,
Mhm.
like no one gets good over time by going from one win to the next,
Mhm.
before that happens, you're just taking one loss to
Mhm.
the next,
Mhm.
and then the wins will come, and then you just get better at navigating,
Mhm.
yourself.
I think that that's true. And I can totally relate to that because, I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, just
Yeah,
in my business, it's like, you know, when you start to internalize your failures as lessons,
yeah,
it means you failed a lot.
yeah, for
And that's
sure.
not a bad thing because I feel as though it's the resilience that matters,
Yeah,
that you get back up again and these incremental things, and maybe also it's just the way that I think perhaps in here I'm just kind of like putting it out there, but
yeah,
I feel as though do you like that whole mindset of getting upset when something's go wrong,
yeah.
how do you understand that now? Like what is your mentality when something horrible
Oh
happens?
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's gonna be inevitable in your life,
Mm,
and kind of how you deal with it, it is gonna be how you're gonna pivot to the next chapter
mhm,
of your life from that situation. So, for me, I kind of put things in place that work for me. Everyone has their own outlets. So, if I'm stressed or I'm feeling sad or things just don't feel right, I'll exercise. Like I'm a huge
mm,
going for a run, hitting the gym sort of
mm,
person.
mm,
Someone else, they might go for a hike, they
mm,
might read. You have to find that thing that's going to level yourself out. But to just take a situation and let it just consume you is just the wrong way,
mm,
to do it. You have to find your outlet that's going to just really kind of reshape how you think and how you feel about the situation, and just kind of reframe your mind so you can move forward in positive motion.
mhm. So when you were saying as when you were younger that it's like it would consume you, like
Yeah.
the problems or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Younger, and I would say 20s, you're really still a baby adult if you think
Yeah. Oh,
about
for
it.
sure.
Not
Yeah.
not everybody's a baby adult in
Yeah.
20s,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
a lot, in the sense that you're still experiencing very new things for the first time, right? Going
Correct.
to the DMV and renewing your life. You never done
Yeah.
that before, so it's like school of art. You got to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
And so walk me through that transition because that's a significant transition from, and still there are people that are 50s and 60s and 70s that are still consumed and allow themselves to be consumed with their thoughts. Walk me through that transition for you. Like, was it something specific that ignited that in you, that
Are you talking
need?
about a transition from working, for a company and working for myself, or
Not so
transition emotionally, or
emotionally, yes, because I think
yeah,
that's the being able, if you're feeling consumed emotionally and not wanting to talk to somebody about
yeah,
their problems because you're trying to just manage your own, right?
yeah, for sure.
I think that and what I'm hearing now, which I know it seems that, and it's the way that you say certain things, you can just tell that like okay, there's a certain protocol of how to handle
Yeah,
things.
yeah, and
If
you develop the protocol that works
yeah,
best for you over
how did that
time.
ignite? How did that happen for you?
I think when things go like terribly wrong, this goes back to it just becoming a really large moment of education for you. So, like for example, when my business was taking off, and my a relationship that I really wanted to work out, it didn't work out, and it just ended, and it was really sad. And now I have this company that's kind of growing, and this relationship that's gone now. That was a big catalyst for me. So for me, I just looked at things in my life that I felt were slowing me down. I felt were making me emotional, that were just kind of just getting in the way of my progress. So for example, for me, almost 4 years ago, I gave up drinking, like just permanently. I never really looked at it as like a huge problem, but then I just realized, hey, you're emotional. When you drink too much, it opens the door for kind of sloppy behavior.
Mm-hmm,
I don't like being hungover. Now you lose days sometimes
mm-hmm,
depending on it was St. Patrick's Day. I couldn't imagine how many people just like the next day
mm-hmm.
like did nothing,
Yeah.
Yeah, like they just did nothing,
Mhm,
and some people are okay with that.
mhm,
But when you have a business and you have an overhead and you have
mhm,
staff,
mhm.
you can't really just like be in this atmosphere where you're just kind of letting,
Lose the day.
yeah,
Yeah.
just lose the day, lose yourself,
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
so for me, I wanted to just create an environment that created balance and harmony
mhm,
with the way that I operate,
mhm,
emotionally, physically, like everything spiritually. So that was one thing, was removing that out of my life,
mhm.
So, and that was, yeah, both the combination of something just going terribly awry in a relationship, and then the business also taking off, and me wanting to be my best self moving forward to just make it all that it can be.
I feel like there is an assumption that here, like I feel like is a little bit missing, at least for me, that I want to dig
For
into
sure. Let's dig
a
in.
little bit
Yeah,
further.
yeah. Let's get unstuck.
Yeah. It's basically like, the fact that, I mean, you seem very regimented because it does
Yeah.
sound very practical,
Yeah.
because you have certain methodologies to uphold kind of like this level of, these rules that you have for yourself,
Yeah.
but not rules, I would say. What's the right, like, just a protocol,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And, you know, for someone to be saying, okay, you're like, it's not like you have a problem with alcohol. You just don't want it to even
Yeah.
insert it into your life in a way that is hindering your behavior in any aspect.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And especially when you start to become in a professional setting, it's like I don't want to go to a work event, have too many, and say the wrong thing to a staff member,
Mm-hmm.
like ever in my life,
Mm-hmm.
So that's gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have a day where I'm just like, I can't work today, cancel my meetings, cancel this client, I'm too hungover. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I never want to have that
Mm-hmm.
sentence come out of my mouth, and that never will now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have a relationship where I wake up the next day and my partner said, you said some weird things. I think
Yeah.
you had too much. I don't want that to exist
Mm-hmm.
ever.
Right.
I'm not trying to be this perfect person,
Mm-hmm.
but I want to remove these things that can cause these problems. So for me, I was like, let's give this up,
Yeah.
So
It takes a certain level of self-awareness, though, because
yeah.
not everybody has that.
Yeah. And then, I'm like gradually dating now, and people just find it actually really attractive.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
and we'll go out and people are like, wow, you're not gonna drink. I'm like, no, you can have a glass of wine though if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, wow, so it's been a positive thing in my life. Now
Mm-hmm.
it's never like looked at now as like, oh, do you have a problem? Like, are you going through something?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'll go out and I'll watch my friends, get annihilated,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just have like some Topo Chico and I'll listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
The farthest I'll go is I'll take like, maybe a very small amount of like an edible,
Mm-hmm.
because that's like a norm now in
Yeah.
Chicago, like all these shops popping up,
Right.
the legalization.
Right.
So I'll do that and that'll just mellow me out. But that's as far as I'm gonna go,
Right.
And the side effects are that is like, oh, he's gonna leave and go get like a ton of food because he's hungry. Like those are my side effects. There's no like,
Yeah.
there's no saying wild things. There's no like getting emotional. There's none of that stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to just create this life where the side effects of all my choices is not going to hinder my growth.
I would say, if anything, perhaps maybe people look to these substances in a way where it's like a social lubrication sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, for sure.
Do you feel that, at times where maybe say there is no edible, I mean, how do you handle, is it that you're just more kind of like relaxed in your own skin, or?
Yeah, I think over time when you remove something and you're like your raw, unfiltered self, you can learn to grow confidence. Like I don't need, to have a couple drinks to just say how I feel
Mhm.
or to be funny or
Mhm.
to like dance in public or to do any of these things
Mhm.
that people like they need.
Mhm.
Now, was it weird when I like made that switch over and I just stopped completely
Mhm.
for months? Yeah, like the first few months were weird, but over time it just became like part of who I am. And then I just really fell in love with just the productivity of it all and just being like just like just organized and a good person and not causing like any issues with anything,
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm like, wow, I can just really go a lot further. Like there's just a lot of things that I think slow people down. They don't recognize it. And for me, alcohol was one of them. The tough thing too is we live in a society where it's a huge, capitalism sort of thing,
Mhm.
like the bars, restaurants, everything. This is how they stay in business. They're pushing these things that,
Mhm.
you gotta get a bottle of wine, like
Mhm.
do some shots. It's St. Patrick's Day.
Mhm.
Oh, it's Cinco de Mayo. Let's like
Mhm.
get crazy.
Mhm.
And so we are kind of just like, these things are kind of just like shoved down our throats. It's like this is what you do on these days. This is what you do. This is how you have fun. But
Mhm.
for me, I'm just like, it's not how I want to have fun anymore. It's not
Mhm.
for me.
Right. Right.
So
So how do you have fun?
For me, I mean, I'll go to a concert, I'll go hiking.
Mhm.
I actually really like kayaking. That's
Oh,
that's like a nerdy thing that I really
what do
like.
you do in the winters?
I'll run outdoors too. I like running outdoors in the
Okay.
winters.
Mhm,
Like movies, stuff like
mhm,
that,
mhm.
reading, yeah, indoor concerts, restaurants, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
There's so many things to, I think that sometimes, our society, specifically because we live in this like social media type of environment,
yeah.
that everybody's posting for, the Instagram or the social
Yeah,
media, whatnot. The aspect of FOMO, where
for
it's
sure.
like, oh, I'm out doing this. For someone who does post all the time, it's highly scheduled, I'm going to say,
Yeah,
I have
yeah,
to make time to do this,
for
and I
sure.
love doing it,
Yeah.
but it is planned. It is something that, and I will say, and, correct me if I'm wrong, and I would love to hear your thoughts also. For those individuals who are posting for social media, most times if you go to a party and you're remembering to just take pictures the entire time, that means it's not that fun of a party.
Yeah, I think you're almost proving to the world that you're having fun when you may not be like having fun.
Hmm.
And I hate to like speak so unfiltered, but
We like that.
I know people who are posting stuff
Mhm.
and like that life is great and they're like struggling down deep. And there's like nothing wrong with not posting if you don't feel like posting
Mhm.
and posting and be like, yo, I'm going through some stuff
Mhm.
and I'm looking forward to getting better, you know?
Mhm.
So I think it's just like good about being your authentic self,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean I'm a big like when I post about like stuff, I'll just be like, oh, 3 years, no alcohol now, you know, like
Mhm.
that's my sort of like vibe when I like post, you know? I
Yeah.
have no problem if someone's like, yo, like why? You know,
Mhm.
like I'm just like that's who I am now, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Especially coming from the restaurant industry and the nightlife
yeah, I
industry.
had my fill of that
Mhm.
stuff like more than like 2 lifetimes, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah. And also like, learning from like the relationships and,
yeah.
so are there more insights you feel like, I mean, and here's another thing I think at least from my trying to understand men, in
Yeah,
general.
for sure.
I think that perhaps maybe something in society is also really pushed in terms of, where you have like the blues and the pinks and whatnot. And, we're trying to get more woke,
Yeah.
and things are evolving now
Yeah.
in society, but it's hard because I think that with men, they're socialized in a way to be the breadwinner,
For sure.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas a woman, it's like, maybe very traditionally, like you were
Yeah.
mentioning, the way that your parents were, like it was in their mind. With it was a different culture back
Yeah,
then,
exactly. Yeah.
whereas now is different as well. So the pressure of having to achieve and be successful and have financial stability for a man, it's stressful because that's kind of the doorway to having a family and being able to support
For
them, and
sure.
and so do you think that is there's some truth to that? Do you think that that's also now something that women also have to worry about, or is this something that
Women worrying about financial stability for themselves, or
yeah,
what do you mean?
like I think that women specifically, like there's the gender norms where it's like, okay, yeah, you can have a profession, support your children, da da da, this and that, but marry a husband and have a family and
Yeah,
take
yeah.
care of the kids.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a
I mean, I
balance.
think everyone has their view on this, and there are for sure women out there who just like want to find a wealthy person, and then just like they're done. They're done with
Mhm.
life, and if that's their goal, that's more power to them. For me personally, it's like I'm pretty busy, so I build my business and I grow that, and I want them to have something to go on. Obviously, I have no problem like taking care of the majority of finances, but for like the old school norm of the women to almost like contribute almost zero because that's the man's job. It's just I'm not a like huge fan of that.
Mhm.
If someone is like looking for that, that's good. But I come from a family where the divorce was pretty tough, and then my mom followed that tradition, and then suddenly she doesn't have a job,
Mhm.
and now she's like late middle aged and she doesn't know what to do.
Mhm.
So I think like you can kind of entrap yourself as a woman if
Mhm.
you can't stand on your own 2 feet to some degree. So I
100%.
almost encourage women to find their passion or just to make sure that they're financially stable prior to getting in a relationship because the unfortunate reality is there's like more than 50% divorce rates. So that's like it's higher than 50% now. So so I just think that and if things don't work out, because it shows that things are like it's coming popular that it doesn't work out,
Hmm.
and from there, you want to be able to stand on your own 2 feet after the settlement money is gone and all these things.
Hmm.
So
100%. And that's
so
really, I think that that's interesting, specifically for men and women,
yeah,
how not to be stuck. I
hmm
think that that's definitely, if you're going to be proactive about that.
yeah.
How about for people that perhaps maybe they're in these situations like, where perhaps maybe you were trying to, and just your thoughts, not just, because I think that
Yeah.
it's every issue is complicated.
It
And
can be
that
a sensitive subject for
yeah,
sure.
definitely. But when it comes to, that stability,
Yeah.
right, and
hmm
being able to kind of like, um, you certainly feel stuck, right? Like if
Yeah.
you're a woman in this situation, but as a man, you are also you feel very stuck in that situation.
Yeah.
If basically now you need to support someone else.
For sure.
I mean, do you find that maybe there might be advice that you could give to somebody in
Y-
that situation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that changed my life totally, that made me so I could scale my business and live like almost financially free, is just a tremendous amount of education on credit and what you can do with credit and how you can maximize credit.
Okay.
So I'm like into this thing called credit hacking, which is like
Ooh.
using your points and having multiple cards and kind of balancing the cards and all that. But as long as you can pay back all these cards, you can have your spending, just be fairly, really large if needed in emergency situations.
Mhm.
So I think it's just really good to just show what you can do with credit, because there's so many credit cards and business cards that have no APR for the first year,
Mhm.
meaning like there's no like massive penalty to pay it back. You
Mhm.
need to pay it back, but you have time and flexibility. I think that's been a huge thing as well. And then when I travel, I don't pay for any flights. I don't pay for any like, rental cars or anything like that, because it's all points accumulated. So that's just like a little tidbit that
Mhm.
I added to my life in the past 3 years
Mhm.
that made it where I could go on dates and not worry so much about the bill. I'm just like, oh, I'm excited for these Amex points, you know?
Oh, yes.
You know, so like, and you can push that even further. I pay my rent with Built MasterCard. So
Okay.
that's one that doesn't act as a credit card, it acts as a bank account. So there's so many things you can do with credit. So I think as a man or even as a woman, if you can leverage credit,
Mhm.
you can just totally just change your life. So that's just personal, kind of like nerdy
I
information.
actually really like this nerdy information, and I would
Yeah.
like to actually, and this is something that, since it
Yeah.
seems like you're the connoisseur to this.
Yeah. So another thing that I want to add to this is like, I do have an investor in my business, but in the beginning, you don't really have anyone that can take on these financial burdens with you.
Mhm.
However, if you have if you worked on your credit and you have a really good score and you
Mhm.
know how to balance multiple cards, that's like an investor in itself.
Yeah.
You get like a no APR card that has like 100,000 point bonus.
Mhm.
Now you can spend, without having to this giant burden. You do need to pay it back. You have time to pay it back. You
Mhm.
can accumulate a huge amount of points and you can kind of just grow. So I
Mhm.
just think it's just a game changer for both men and women.
Yeah.
Credit is like such a fascinating thing to me because
Mhm.
it's changed over the past 5 years, like tremendously.
Yeah. And so, okay. So, and just a little nerdy portion of my
Yeah, yeah,
follow-up
yeah,
question, but then
yeah,
I also want to link it back. But
yeah,
um, is it true that, if you have, say, like an Amex card, you've accumulated a certain amount of points, you want to buy like a flight or something like that?
yeah.
Don't buy it through Amex. There's certain other platforms that you can go to
You
where
can
it's dollar
transfer
for
you
dollar
can
worth
transfer
more.
points to other
Yeah.
things. You'll have to kind of research
Yeah.
depending on how things work. But a good place to start is like YouTube. There's like so many credit gurus, and I
Mhm.
learned about all this stuff through YouTube.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Chase has like great portals, Amex has great portals, but there's all these like tricks of the trade,
Mhm.
where you can transfer points and all these things, and it's just like it's really exciting for me. Like I don't spend like anything on debit ever in my life, ever. There's nothing ever on debit.
Okay.
Everything is all credit, everything is all like calculated. And then you can just like, everything should just be like a point system.
Interesting.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, that's another episode.
Yeah,
Practical advice.
for sure, for sure. I
But
mean, I'm still learning, but it's just like it's nuts. Like because every time you travel, you should not be paying for that.
yes, agreed.
Everything.
Well, that's why I think I was, because I tried to do that, cash in on my points.
Yeah.
There was a certain website that you can go to where if you tried to cash in on Amex, they will actually you can qualify for, like, you won't be able to buy a certain airline ticket, but if you go
Yeah,
to a certain
right.
other
A lot
website.
of them have hotel partners too that you can transfer to that hotel partner,
Okay.
and then that's like the hotel like experience is like so much bigger too, And there's like there's giant groups on Instagram and all these other ones like Reddit and all these places that just go through all these points, and there's just people that are just like that have just never paid for much of anything,
Yeah.
it just by spending the regular amount of money.
Okay. So,
So
guys, this is how you don't feel stuck. This
yeah,
is practical knowledge.
I think if you start working on your credit like 3-4 years, you can just like, so for me, I have about 10 cards, and the spend like that I can get through all those tens
Mhm.
is maybe somewhere in the realm of like 500,000,
Oh,
and
wow.
I have nowhere near 500,000 in my bank account, but if I needed to, I could spend that,
Uh-huh.
an emergency or like in a situation,
Mhm.
and it's nice to know that that safety net is there, and then that
Mhm.
can be spent on a rent, that can be spent. And now this could sound dangerous. You can put yourself in like debt and all these things.
Mhm.
However, if you are organized and structured in your life, you
Mhm.
can pay these things off, and you
Mhm.
can know the rules and the regulations and all these things, how to protect yourself too.
So,
So
so that's cool. So tying into that though, because I
yeah,
feel like, so that is a major mindset shift from having to work in the restaurant industry that might be a
yeah,
very hand to mouth situation,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
versus kind of now coming into this space where you like have discovered this new sense of financial freedom.
for sure.
I would like to understand though, because for people who are listening and maybe are thinking about kind of a career change, um, there is that. I mean, so being struggling, that's hand to mouth, where you're basically like you're working long hours and, as a line cook and dealing with people
Yeah,
and being on your feet and then not having time for your passions, versus now with artist complete,
yeah.
which I was calling it replit, but
It's okay.
it's that.
So I picked a word that is so obscure that it would just stand out, and it basically means the opposite of starving. Because there's like that classic term when you're in a corporate setting, and it's
Mhm,
like if someone's like doctor, lawyer, and someone's an artist,
mhm,
they could, if they don't know how like profitable the industry could be, they could be like, "It's a starving artist." This
mhm.
person's probably like barely getting by, and starving artist is like a very well known term.
Yes, right.
Like
Uh-huh.
that goes over to musicians,
Mhm,
that goes over to like so many different creative fields,
mhm, mhm, mhm,
so I just found replete, it
mhm.
means literally the opposite. It's like you're well fed, you're well supplied
Right.
with something, and I'm just like artist replete. I didn't want it to be like so like me focused, meaning you have all these like other ventures that are that this like the gallery, and have someone's name in front of the gallery,
Mhm,
the
mhm.
Thomas Gallery,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm,
the Stephanie Gallery or
mhm,
something like
mhm,
that. And it's
mhm.
just like it's kind of just about that person plus like a business thing. And I'm just like, I want this to be about a brand, and I want this to be way bigger than me,
Mhm, mhm.
because like the ultimate goal is like I pass away and someone else is building this as well,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So
So scaling it in a way,
yeah,
a legacy.
yeah, for
Mhm,
sure,
mhm, mhm.
and not boxing it into what it could just be like. Oh, it can only be this brick and mortar location where you just do this thing. It's like I wanted to do many things. I
Right.
want there to be maybe an apparel line. I
Mhm,
want there to be, I made like an ebook many years ago that helped artists,
mhm.
so I wanted it to be like just not boxed into anything.
Yeah. No,
So
I love that. And so now I would like to get into, definitely. So the name is abundance, right? Like it's an abundant
yeah,
versus basically, I mean, you have, anybody that you're showcasing. Definitely think that that's very clever. You mentioned that you started in during the pandemic.
yeah. So I built like a website in 2017. I had no idea what I was doing, but it really became a reality in the pandemic. Like
Mhm.
I felt almost guilty in a way because the business was taking off. I was making the most of the pandemic to the point I was hoping the pandemic would just last for a while.
Yeah.
Because now you have everyone is indoors, they're online shopping like crazy.
Oh
They
my
have
gosh.
nowhere to go.
Everything house. Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking in their place and they're like, I kind of want to redecorate.
Hmm.
And they're given like government money, So now they have this money,
Hmm.
and some people got it and they didn't really have any plans to even get it and what they're going to do with it. So like I just got so many art sales to the point where my mom was temporarily an employee. I said like, I was like, I have to ship out like 40 orders today.
Hmm.
And and I'm like, it takes me an hour to box one and wrap one like
Hmm.
properly,
Hmm.
and these people like they want this pretty quick.
Yeah.
So she came up from Michigan. She lives in Michigan, and she put her mask on, and we were just boxing stuff up. So that
Mhm.
was like a moment.
Yeah.
So I was just like, wow, this could be a reality.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the restaurants allowed people to like go in them, even with masks off, it was a weird moment. We had these rules like sit outside or like sit in bubbles. There's
Yeah.
all these weird things.
Changing
Yeah,
every
it
few
was all it was
minutes.
like separated. And I do a show at this place in Pilsen. It's called Pilsen Yards, and it's in the pandemic, but you can go into it like and you can wear a mask. And it was just like it was just a huge show. The venue is like 6,000 square feet, and it was packed. Like it was packed, just like with tons of people that were just waiting to come out and do something.
Yeah.
So online was going well, the actual physical things, and then the galleries in the Water Tower place. In the Water Tower place, they got like ransacked during the pandemic.
yeah.
People came up in there, so they had some open spaces. They're like, "Could you do a pop-up show here?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds good." So I did a pop-up show there, and then when things started to get back to normal, they like offered a space, obviously to rent, and then we moved in at the end of 2022, and that was like it was basically the gallery of Dr. Seuss. That's what it was for like 10 years. So it already had the bones of it. Already had the bones of a gallery, but it was perfect for me because I wanted to be downtown. I wanted to be centralized, and I wanted there to be good foot traffic. So I'm like, I was already directing people to like wherever I had a pop up. So like, come to this restaurant. So I didn't like, I cared about location, but I didn't care about like, it didn't have to be perfect. So yeah.
No, I love it. And I think you do a lot of rotational sort of art, or maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we rotate exhibits every month to 45 days, and then we'll add a lot of stuff in like in the meantime, and then we'll do pop-up exhibitions with restaurants. So I try and keep it fun. Our next actual show, we're doing a comedy show with artwork that is kind of like edgy and comedic as well. And I never really experienced anything like that. So I was like, this will be cool. So I'm constantly trying to just like do different things.
And that's like a big aspect of like your creativity.
Yeah.
Because again, I mentioned, I mean, yeah, definitely the artist is creative because they're creating things.
For sure.
But to be able to kind of produce something like that, just all the different subject areas, right? So you have the toy soldiers, and I think recently I saw something where there are animals or something, and needles, and many different mediums, it seems, and even with AI and art, with the way that, because if you think about it, prompting an AI agent is actually you're thinking about what to tell it to do, it's
exactly.
obeying,
Yeah, and I think a lot of the information that AI is getting is just from like, thousands and thousands of different like existing
data points,
pictures that artists have made. So yeah, it's taking a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, but that in itself is creativity.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, so that is interesting. So now as you kind of got more involved in this space, how are you now, like, what would you say there was just a certain genre of the kind of art that you're choosing? It's not like the traditional.
Yeah, for sure. So
type of.
in the beginning, I was just kind of just working with any art that I thought was cool. Like it was just like super, like who's going to work with me? We're talking like month one, and now we're looking for stuff where it needs to check boxes. We want there to be market value. We want it to be intriguing. How does our staff feel about it? Because when you sell a piece, 10, 15, 20, $30,000, you want that person to not only have something that they can treasure, because sometimes artists pass down like, to family, but you want to give them the best opportunity that it could be like a legitimate investment. So if we see an artist growing in the market and we like the work, then now we're hitting kind of two boxes. Like the work is good and the market is trending, and it looks like this could be a legitimate investment. So we sign artists like that at this moment. But in the beginning, I was just like cool stuff, you know. So yeah, but I do always try and give up and coming people like a shot as well, meaning like a newer artist that is like, that has much more cost effective work, for the new art collector. Then we sell prints and things like that too. So I basically try and cater to someone who's brand new to art and someone who's like a seasoned collector, We work with a lot of people who are like in hedge funds and own law firms and all these things. And these are like really serious collectors. And for someone of that level of education and success to come to me, this guy who has almost no formal education, to ask me, hey, what do you think about this piece? Like, it's just like, I don't even know how to describe that feeling of importance that I get, and I'm just like, it's unreal, and I'm really happy that I was able to kind of cultivate, this life and just come from a place of honesty, to the clientele.
Yeah, and there is a definitely, I mean, it's the cultivation of something like that, though, because I think that
Yeah.
most people do not understand, um, I myself don't as well,
Like value
the
association. Yeah.
value association with, like, say, for example, considering what is kind of like, how does this art appreciate? What's the value that
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
providing?
It's crazy. You'll go to like something like Art Basel, or you go to like a Sotheby's auction, and you can see some crazy scribbles, and they'd be like $1 million sold.
Why?
And people will be like, "This makes no sense," but these are just like dealers that have just created a fierce market, and at that point, you're kind of playing with money. And that there's that element of the industry as well. But I try and make it a point where I'm exhibiting stuff that I feel is really powerful
Mhm.
and also has that value to it. And a lot of it is just data. Like, okay, this museum exhibited this artist. They've been selling work, for 20 years. They've sold this many amount of pieces, in the last year. You're just taking a lot of numbers, and you're like, wow, okay, this is all legitimate. Like,
Mhm.
let's go for it.
Mhm. So
So
there's definitely a financial aspect to it.
there is,
But I also think that specifically, like, for example, in the instance that you might be giving a new artist an opportunity,
for sure.
um, you know, that's kind of like still like, the
Yeah,
level playing
you're
field.
almost creating a market for them. So a
Mhm.
lot of artists, they can skip the whole just kind of starving or the really painful areas
Mm.
if they just work and create this like really unique captivating style, and they just work with a bigger gallery who has hundreds of thousands of collectors and could just send an email blast that has like 20,000 people that have previously bought from them saying this is the new it artist, and then they're
Mm.
just going to listen to them. You're
Interesting.
kind of almost like a dictator at that point.
There are a few different methods for an artist to become successful.
Yeah.
One, align yourself with some sort of venture capital type institution.
Yeah, yeah, just like a really good dealer.
Mhm.
And then like the power of social media has never like before made it like just so easy for you to become your own business. So artists can just like take off on TikTok, on Instagram, have like a cool video with a
Mhm.
cool style, and suddenly they could just sell themselves. And that's usually the intro part
Mhm.
where someone like me will like, wow, I really like their work. Look at them, like they're trending on social. The work is amazing. Like
Mhm.
we gotta talk to them immediately before
Mhm.
they just take off and some
Right.
big gallery gets them.
Interesting.
So
Kind of
yeah,
like real estate.
yeah, for sure, yeah.
But also, though, at least from what I'm hearing, is that it also depends on the artist. There was one, at least from what I was explained to me from someone in the art industry, is that, there was an artist and she had these paintings and, just faces, right? I forget, Lita Kabayut or something like that was her.
Okay.
And so she would make these faces of like, there's one woman, she's really angry, weathered looking, and then
Yeah,
another one where she was just sad and depressed,
got it.
and I came to find that the artist was actually an orphan in Brazil. And
Nice.
and it does kind of draw a parallel that it means a little bit more when someone has experienced some sort of um, had some life
For
experiences.
sure.
For someone, a child who's been an orphan and just kind of have it to kind of have
Yeah.
a tough.
You're investing into a story, and you're investing into like the personality, and you're investing into history of someone.
Mhm.
So
So do you think that that's also like another silo when it
yeah,
comes
yeah,
to?
for sure. I mean, to kind of really capitalize on markets of different artists, I'll write an article on them. I'll write their story,
Mhm.
who they've collaborated, their journey,
Mhm.
the market of them, how they view their art like now, how they view their art in the future, stuff like that. So storytelling is like a really big aspect of this business, and I think just many businesses as well.
Mhm.
So
Do you feel imposter syndrome ever?
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I'm off of Michigan Ave, when there's like a Nike store and Louis Vuitton is right down
Mhm.
the street and
Mhm.
Gucci's down the street. And these are like really big brands, and
Mhm.
I'm just, I'm like 2 years into a physical location, and I'm just like these are like the biggest companies in the world, and
Mhm.
I'm like a block from them. I'm like, I don't know if I should be here sometimes.
Mhm.
But then I just realized, that this industry I chose is so unique. And that when people come downtown Chicago, they either go to a museum,
Mhm.
or they could come check out the gallery.
Mhm.
In which case, a lot of people have come by the gallery, they're like, oh, we like this way better than the museum.
Mhm.
Just because they can understand it. They're
Mhm.
like, this is a living artist right now. They
Mhm.
live in Chicago. Here's this style, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So in that aspect, uh, I try to come out of that imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah.
But for sure, yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely felt that on numerous occasions, especially moving into the location that we have,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I think also it's like for anyone that is trying to have a career change or might just be stay-at-home mom that, is just feeling kind of like, okay, I need something more in my life.
Yeah.
Whenever you do something new, I mean, starting in the pandemic, and that was, I mean, just to kind of, first of all, doing these sales when you were in the nightclub industry,
Yeah.
taking it to the next place and that next level,
Yeah.
but then also having the grit to continue to keep doing it.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you find that your levels of imposter syndrome kind of because I mean, I've had it too. I mean, and in some ways I hear that people who will talk about it's like that means that you feel like you need to move forward. It's
Yeah.
not a bad thing.
I think it's a healthy thing. And
Mhm.
I think if you don't have it, then, you could be a little too egoic. You could
Mm.
almost be like a narcissist,
Right.
Like, so you have to almost be, you have to really believe in yourself for sure. Like
Mhm.
without a doubt, you have to have, and like, this is going to work. This is going to happen. And you have to talk to yourself like that for years,
Mhm. Mhm.
Alex Hormozy is like a favorite of mine.
Mhm.
And he says, like in the beginning, there's a single clap. And that person is you
Mhm.
clapping for yourself.
Mhm.
And that clap sometimes goes on for years.
Mhm.
Then over time, you'll hear like a little bit of an audience,
Mhm.
like a few other claps,
Mhm.
like a small like jazz cafe. And
Mhm.
then if you work long enough, you'll feel an auditorium of claps,
Mhm. Mhm.
when you really take off,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I think imposter syndrome is good. I think it can propel you
Yeah.
to be like, hey, like I don't think I'm where I need to be,
Mhm.
like, but let's go further.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think there's a healthy side to
Yeah,
that.
I think
So
it gives you purpose. I
for
mean,
sure.
because if you think about it, like, I mean, certainly you start at a certain place in your business, and I think that a lot of people need it to be destigmatized because, that, what is it, overnight success that took 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
It does not happen overnight
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would like to highlight is you need to give your idea and your thing like actually time to work. Like a lot of people will try something for like maybe 6 months and like, ah, man, I just really didn't work. Like I will tell you, like the first 3 years, I almost made nothing in this
hmm
business. And now it's just like a six-figure, like we're shooting for seven,
hmm
company
hmm
now. But like had I like operated with like logic in my
hmm
first 3 years, I would have been like, this is dumb. I'm walking away.
hmm
But you have to just keep pushing and almost be like just not logical about it,
Right.
Like
hmm
like an example for this podcast is like maybe